This was January 2018. A big scoop from McClatchy Wire Service. FBI investigating whether Russian money went to NRA to help Trump in the 2016 campaign. The story said the FBI was looking into whether a top Russian banker with ties to the Kremlin illegally funneled money to the NRA to help Donald Trump win the presidency. That Russian banker tied to the Kremlin we now know is Alexander Torshin, seen here with his very famous protege, Maria Butina. Butina pled guilty last year to a conspiracy to infiltrate the NRA and other American conservative groups as an unregistered agent working on behalf of the Kremlin. Despite a ton of reporting on Russia and Maria Butina and the Russian efforts to infiltrate and influence the NRA, we never ultimately heard of what became of that reported FBI investigation into whether part of what was going on with the NRA is that Russia was using the group to funnel foreign money into the 2016 election to help Trump. Soon after that McClatchy story first appeared, a watchdog group filed a complaint with the FEC, asking the FEC to look into that claim. It was never clear how the FEC actually responded to that or what their response amounted to. Today, we got a little bit of an answer to that, and it came with an exclamation point. Democratic FEC Commissioner Ellen Weintraub has just gone public with this statement, saying that the Republican appointees on the FEC basically throttled the investigation to make sure that these allegations were never really looked into. Quote, this agency barely lifted a finger to find out the truth behind one of the most blockbuster campaign finance allegations in recent memory. The FEC's Republican commissioners have blocked the commission from taking even the smallest step to investigate whether Torshin and Butina violated the ban on foreign national contributions. We still do not know the answer to this foundational, eminently knowable question. For the Republican commissioners to turn a blind eye to the possibility that a foreign adversary secretly funneled tens of millions of dollars into a presidential campaign is to bring their obstruction to a new and breathtakingly damaging level. She closes, further investigation was and is required. Joining us now is Ellen Weintraub, Democratic member and current chair of the Federal Election Commission. Commissioner Weintraub, thanks very much for being here. I appreciate you making time.
Thank you for having me, Rachel.
So help me understand what you mean about the distance between what the FEC, what you and your colleagues could have done here, and what has been done. You say your Republican colleagues made it sure that the FEC would barely lift a finger to look into this. What could they have done versus what they did do?
Well, we could have done an investigation. The FEC has a process. Anybody can file a complaint with the FEC, and our lawyers will review it, and then the commission gets to decide whether we're actually going to investigate or not. And the reason what happened today was the file was made public that showed that the FEC did not do any investigation in this case, did not take the most basic step of even calling the FBI. The complaint was based on that McClatchy article, which said the FBI was investigating. So I said to my colleagues, well, let's at least call the FBI and ask them. And then we'll know whether the article was well-founded or not. We'll have that basic question answered. Are they investigating or aren't they? If they are, they might have some interesting information for us. But in any event, we would at least know whether the article was based on real information or not. And this really was dumbfounding to me. I could not get agreement from my colleagues for our staff to make a single phone call over to the FBI, a sister agency, a law enforcement agency, wouldn't have bothered any American citizen or in any way impaired their First Amendment rights. All we needed to do was to call another government employee and say, are you or are you not investigating this issue? Couldn't get the votes, couldn't do it.
If that had happened, hypothetically, and again, it didn't, would the FBI have told you? Would it, I mean, I don't understand how the relationship between agencies would work on something like this, but would the FBI have to have told you if they were, in fact, involved in this investigation?
They don't have to tell us, but they often will tell us. They will tell us basic information. Sometimes they'll tell us, we're in the middle of an investigation and we'd rather that you just sit tight for a while and let us sort it out and see what we can find out first. And, you know, that's fine. The FEC will often agree to abate their investigations while the Justice Department or the FBI is looking into something. Or sometimes they'll say, we've decided it's not a criminal matter. It might be a civil matter. We're happy to share some information with you. Sometimes they say there's really very little we can tell you. Or they could certainly fairly easily say, We don't know what that article was talking about. We're not investigating at all.
Could you,
we just don't know the answer.
Could you, as FEC chair, as an individual commissioner, call and try to get the FBI to tell you that information, or it has to be a vote of the whole commission to direct your staff to make the call?
Then we have a memorandum of understanding with the Justice Department. The normal procedure is for the staff to call and make that request on behalf of the agency. It's not something that individual commissioners usually do, and the FBI would probably want to respect that memorandum of understanding. They'd expect to hear from the legal staff, from our counsel's office, not from commissioners.
And
our staff would be, probably afraid to make that phone call without the direction of, or at least the approval of the commission.
Does anything about the fact that the Maria Butina case has evolved here, that she's pled guilty to unlawfully acting as a secret foreign agent on behalf of the Russian Federation through the NRA with an eye toward influencing the 2016 election? I mean, that was a big development in this saga. Did any of that inflect the way that this moved or didn't through the FEC? Were your fellow commissioners at all moved by that?
Well, they certainly were aware of it. They just didn't find it a persuasive fact in terms of investigating this complaint.
Wow. Unbelievable. Ellen Weintraub, a Democrat serving on the Federal Election Commission, as right now its chair. Thank you for, sending the flag up the flagpole to let people know this is how it happened. But thanks also for helping us understand it tonight.
My pleasure, Rachel.
All right, we got much more to get to. Busy Friday night. Stay with us.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.